Hi, I'm Baggy and I'm in my bikini, so we're gonna talk about movies that I've been thinking about. This week I was supposed to publish this review way sooner, but our electric went out. The cats ate Olaf, my cat. He ate my wire to my setup, so I'm using like a different setup for this video, which is just gonna have to work. By tomorrow, when I do the next one, it should be same old, but this is going to look a little different than my other stuff will. So today I'm going to talk about the movie M3gan, that just came out this year in 2023. I was kind of surprised. It had a PG-13 rating, which I was expecting it to have a radar rating. And, judge me in the comments, but my daughter begged me to let her watch this movie with me. So I did, but I mean, I covered her eyes during a lot of the parts, but I guess one of her friends at school saw it. She's only in preschool, and she really wanted to watch it. And I was like, you know what? You can watch it, but I'm going to cover your eyes during certain parts. And which it was kind of funny to watch it with her because overall, I think Megan's a great movie. I think it's a great doll horror AI type thing, but I felt like for some reason, some of the things in the film was a little shallow. Like they could have done a little more or went into kind of more detail about why the dangers of like AI or why certain things in the film are kind of wrong, or I felt like a lot was left out for a newer film with such a high budget. But it was still a really good film. I mean, I enjoyed it. That was just kind of my only complaints about it. And the film starts off with like a fake advertisement, which I thought was cute, for these little animals. Oh, what were they called? They're by Funky, and they're called Perpetual Pets, which is like kind of funny, because they don't die. Like that's the gimmick. And if you have a kid and you've ever had an animal that's moved on, I mean, it's just like one of the families died and it's really hard for your kids. So I definitely get the idea of the perpetual pet. And basically, Katie is in the back seat of her car, like with her virtual pet. What was his name? I can't remember. It was something silly. Leroy. That was what she named her virtual pet. His name was Leroy. And I think her parents are driving, and her dad's driving. Her mom's in the passenger seat, and they're going on some kind of vacation. I assume in the mountains. And there's a snowstorm they can't see, and it's a little ironic because they're like, oh, we can't just stop in the middle of the road. We're gonna get hit, and then boom, they get hit by, a snowplow truck, which is ironic. And Katie was like trying to take off her seatbelt to get Leroy, and they like screamed at her to put it back on. And like, quote me if comment if I'm wrong, but like, I'm pretty sure she did fasten her seatbelt back and was okay. So she, the car accident happens, and then it goes to like a cityscape, and then we're at the toy factory where Katie's aunt Gemma works, and Gemma is working on a project that she spent like $10,000 of the company's money on. And it's kind of funny because like she has like a different pin code for their door, so like their boss can't just walk in, and he gets like really mad. He's like, I want the pin for this door, which I thought was really funny. Um, but basically they're working on M3gan, what is it? It's an acronym, obviously. And he, so, um, like M3gan isn't like doing too good when the boss sees her, right? She's still like being worked on, and she's like, "Oh, I guess you're my dad," because and he doesn't think that's very funny at all. He's not finding her clever. He is seeing dollar signs though, so he looks at Gemma and he's basically like, "Get it ready. We need to make our money back on this." Like, I think he says like Hasbro's gonna take a shit or something, because like I'm sure toy companies are very competitive in real life because, I mean, let's not forget the 1980s when people were literally killing each other over Cabbage Patch dolls. Cabbage Patch dolls, the ugliest, most basic like baby doll in the world. But hey, 1980, if you were trying to get a Tickle Me Elmo or a Cabbage Patch doll, like you were ready to shank somebody over it. It was just like, I guess, part of the times. which is ironic too, because then, like movies like Chucky came out around that time, which was highly influenced by the whole like Black Friday mentality. And I kind of thought this movie was going to be just like the Chucky or Child's Play, just like the Chucky movies. But it was actually like a little different, like the doll isn't like haunted. I know my daughter the whole time kept saying that the doll was haunted. I'm like, no, she's not haunted. She's just programmed to be protective and doesn't, because she's an AI, she doesn't understand the difference between like good and bad. So she's like doing something she's programmed to do, which sometimes is not good because they haven't worked out the bugs. But it was really funny because when Megan came on the TV, my daughter was like, it's Megan's time, which they definitely should have used in the movie, but they didn't. So, she, basically, Gemma decides, like, she's gonna present Megan when it's ready with her daughter, Katie. Or, Jesus, not her. Well, I guess she's her daughter now because of the adoption and the death, but it's technically her niece. And she, before that, or no, I was right. After that, Katie visits, her niece in the hospital. She's all banged up. She's got like a neck brace on and everything. And then, they talk about adoption, and Gemma's basically saying, my sister wanted her with me, so I'm sure that's what the right thing to do is. Because, she's not really acting like she wants Katie, which is sad. She's acting like it's her duty to take care of Katie, basically. So she brings Katie home, and she's like, oh, wow, and looks at all these toys that Gemma has. She's like, oh, those aren't toys, they're collectibles. Like, you can't play with those. And she's like kind of bummed about that. And then, she's like, oh, well, my mom used to read me a story before bed. And she's like, oh, I'll just update the app to where, it something reads to you. And it's really sad because that's like a real missed moment between her and her niece to kind of bond. I mean, her nieces just became an orphan, like, in a matter of minutes. Like, that's extremely traumatic, let alone her injuries. So she should be there for her. But really, like, Gemma wasn't gonna have kids, so you kind of are rooting for her in a way, because you can tell, like, she's trying to do what's right, even though it's not what she technically wants to do. And then Katie gets this therapist, which, like, the real villain of this story is the therapist. She's such a bitch. She is so rude. She's just like very presumptuous. And it's funny because the therapist almost treats Katie like she's a child, like a little girl. But really, Katie's like becoming a young woman. And you think somebody licensed like that, she's acting like because Katie could have trauma from this, that she should be like reverted and like, you know what I mean? Like baby talking and acting like more like an infant or something. And that's just not Katie. Like, Katie's very mature. She seems like she's growing into a young woman. And it just, you know what I mean? It's just not, it just doesn't seem like the therapist is really like paying attention to Katie. It's like she's more worried about Gemma being perfect for Katie than she is about Katie herself. So, and she makes this house call, the therapist does, to like observe Katie and Gemma together. And then it's funny because when the therapist is there, she's like, oh, like, let's do an activity where you guys like play together. And she sees something on the shelf that looks like a ball, but it's not. It does something else. And she's like, why don't you guys roll the ball to each other? And Katie's like, oh, no, that's not a toy. We're not supposed to get that out. And Gemma is automatically like, oh, no, we can get it out. Like, we can play with it. That's okay. Because the therapist is like watching her like a hawk, and she's like, oh, let me show you how it works. And the therapist is like, no, just roll the ball. And like Gemma kind of gets on this like little tangent about how like, that's not what it's meant to do. It's not how it works. And the lady's like, just play ball with your niece, basically. And she's like, okay, we will roll it like it is a tennis ball. Like, she starts to get lippy. But I mean, the therapist is rude. Like I said, the real villain of this movie is probably the therapist. And so when the therapist goes to leave, she basically like tells Gemma she wants to talk to her alone outside. and says that, like, you wanted this, right? And again, she's like, well, my sister wanted her to go to me, so I'm sure that's where she wants. And she's like, oh, well, another relative's willing to take her. And she was like, I'm pretty sure if my sister wanted her to go there, that she would have put it in her will that way. And, she says that, they'll just have to make adjustments, which, is normal. So Gemma tells Katie that she's taking her to work, and then it's like, well, I can't work in the house, but like, you're gonna have to entertain yourself, basically, which is like not what Katie was hoping for. Like, Katie really like needs someone there to help spend time with her through these trying times, but at the same time, like, unexpectedly she's in Gemma's life now, and Gemma does have to finish this project or she will get fired, and then like nobody in that house is gonna eat. You know what I mean? So, and it's kind of cute because there's a scene where Gemma works super late, like in another room of the house, and then Katie comes in, doesn't say anything. She's like, oh my God, Katie, it's late. Like, I'm sorry. And she shows her aunt a picture she drew of like this multi-headed monster with like different animal heads on it. And she's like, oh, I really struggled with the fur. And Gemma's like, oh, I can relate. Like, I draw fur on animals too, because she's like a designer for a toy company. And basically, like, to try to make up, she like shows her around the garage and shows her this robot she made in college. And she's like, oh, his name's Bruce. It's kind of cute because she's like, how does he work? She's like, oh, you don't want to know. Like, it'd creep you out. And basically, it's like like a basic robot that you can control yourself. And she's like, oh, why didn't it become successful? And she's like, oh, because he's really expensive, and most people don't want to pay that kind of money for it. And then, so like, the next day is like presentation day, right? So, like, not the main like the big presentation, but like the presentation to David of their boss of it being finished. So basically, they have Katie behind like this two-way glass, like she's in the police station or something, and David's on the other side watching. And this really cool thing happens where Megan like scans Katie, she pairs with her, and then they like start to hang out, basically. And she's like, oh, you want to play? And the little girl's like, yes. And her and Megan are drawing together, and it looks like Megan's like malfunctioning because she knocks over this water. But really, when she knocks it over, you see this like beautiful portrait that she's made of Katie that's just like so perfect, and it really like puts a smile on her face. So again, David's watching, and he's seeing like big dollar signs, you know and that's when he says that we're gonna kick Hasbro in the dick, which I thought was really funny. Just thinking about toy companies being competitive. And then Megan, when they get home, reads Alice in Wonderland to Katie, and she does like all the voices, but like her voice is actually different each time because she's a robot, which I thought would be like a really cool feature about that. And then but there's more people on Gemma's team. There's a lady and a man working with her also. I know the woman's name is Tess, and come for me in the comments, but I think the other man's name's David. No, that's her boss. I don't know what the other guy's name is. He's not in it a lot. Is like bad. I should know what it is, but it's been a rough week in my house, so I don't know his name, but he's working on it. And basically, Tess is like, are we like replacing people's parents with this? Like, shouldn't you be doing those things with Katie and not the doll, basically? And she's like, yeah, well, I don't think, she obviously doesn't care for that. And then, like I said, the presentation to the main boss went really well. And afterwards, I think Katie's like in the hall or something. So like, Gemma can talk to her crew. And all of a sudden, like, Megan turns on by herself and says, like, how did Katie's parents die? And they're like, oh my God, she's not supposed to do that. So, like, already Megan is, like, showing signs of, like, becoming, like, independent and, like, free thinking and all the things that, an AI doll just isn't supposed to do, but probably can evolve to do if we don't keep an eye on it. And, Megan also says that death is part of life, which I thought was, interesting. But her goal is to protect Katie from physical and emotional harm, which causes big problems because, like, she's eventually Megan starts to look at Gemma like, are you emotionally harming Katie? And there's also other instances where people are either emotionally or physically harming Katie, and Megan decides to take the reins and make sure it doesn't happen again through very violent methods. So they Gemma's neighbor, Celia, I think's her name, has a dog named Dewey. I remember the dog's name, of course. His name's Dewey. And he's like a German Shepherd. And I guess he's like always getting loose, getting off the leash, running in her yard. And the neighbor's like, oh, she's never in your yard. And uh, Gemma's like, well, I'm not shitting in the yard, so it must be your dog, which I thought was hilarious. But basically, the dog is annoying everybody, and then they're playing outside. The girls are Megan and Katie. I'm gonna call them the girls, even though one's not a real girl. And Katie's playing with like a bow and arrow set, and her arrow, she can't find it, so she's like, Megan, look for it. And Megan like scans it, but prior to that, she was like scanning like helicopters and butterflies, which I thought would have been really cool if Megan had like shot down a helicopter because it was a threat. But I mean, I bet that was like probably too expensive to do, even for somebody like James Wan. But so they go to get the arrow, and the arrow is like under the fence where and over in the other neighbor's yard. So, Katie just goes to get it, just being an innocent little girl, not thinking about stuff like that, and the dog bites her. So, or no, actually, first Megan tries to go get it. The dog tries to pull her under the fence, and then the little girl gets involved, pulls her back, and then gets bit by the dog. So, Gemma's pissed. She's like, she's like, if you don't put your dog down, I'm going to put him down for you. And, they're, obviously like her hand's gonna get infected, so they go and get it treated and stuff. And the whole time, like, Megan's just like glaring at that dog, like, oh my god, you bit my person, like, just wait till I get you alone type look. And later that night at like 3 a.m., Megan goes outside, and it's really messed up because like she's replicated his owner's voice and is like, Dewey, come here. So he comes over, and you see him like sniffing the hole in the fence where she put some treats, and then she just like grabs him by the collar and he disappears. So we're pretty sure Dewey's dead at this point. So the next morning, um, the neighbor's obviously looking for Dewey. Gemma kind of has a talk with Katie, like, you don't have to do this today if you don't want to, and then is like, lots of people paid lots of money to fly here, but like, sure, don't do it, like, which is really unfair because it's like, dude, this little girl's lost her family, her life, her structure, and then she got bit by a dog, like, and you're still just so worried about yourself, which is really sad. So she takes her to do this demonstration, not for David, she already did that, but she's like doing a demonstration for like people interested in it to, you know what I mean, to really like sell it. And same thing, Katie's behind this like two-way glass, and Katie's like, hey, you want to do this, you want to, in the presentation, and Katie just starts like crying, which is really sad, and she starts to comfort her and is like, what's wrong? And she's like, it's just like every day it's like it's happening all over again, just like losing my parents. And she she's like, well, what's a happy memory you have of your mom? And Katie tells this story about how she wasn't eating her sandwiches at lunch, and her mom like went to take them out of her backpack, and a cockroach like flew up her arm, and she ran out of the house. And Megan like records her saying that and is like, well, now we have this memory forever, and we can listen to it whenever you want. So of course the people watching are like, wow, this is really impressive. And then Megan sings this like creepy little song about like how I'll always be there for you and stuff, which really reminded me of Chucky, where he's like, I'm your friend till the end, like that kind of creepy thing. I'm personally really creeped out by dolls. I don't like sharks, and I don't like dolls. Like, I don't fuck with them. You know what I mean? I just don't. They're not for me. They creep me the hell out. Like, no. Um So they after the big presentation, Gemma takes Katie out to eat. She's like eating a hot dog, but she keeps like not wanting to eat and like goofing off with Megan. And then they kind of have like an argument where they both try to turn Megan off, and that's kind of like foreshadowing for later where Megan like will not turn off. And she basically, Gemma decides that she's gonna go to school. And Katie doesn't want to go to school. She's like, I was homeschooled, mom wanted me to be homeschooled. And Mac was like, she's not going to school, that's just a day camp thing. But I really do think it was like an alternative school thing where they did like school outside that she takes her to. So she takes her and she's like, Megan's coming. And she's like, no, she's not, I need to work on her. And basically will not like listen, you know what I mean? So she finally is like, fine, take Megan. And the teacher doesn't help either. She's like, oh, we have a toy table you can put her on, which is like my favorite part of the whole movie because Megan's like looming on this like toy table with a bunch of teddy bears and stuff. And Gemma kind of sticks around to help, like, I think prep lunch. And one of the ladies she's prepping lunch with is like, oh, like, my son loves this. Like, he does much better here than at regular. She's like, he's just so smart, and that's why teachers have problems with him. And then she's like, do you need a hat? And he's like, shut the fuck up. And she's like, I was just asking, like, and it's like, yeah, I wonder why public school doesn't like your kid that much. I'm sure it's because he's so smart. And then nobody wants to be paired with him. So the teacher like pairs Katie with him to like, I don't go hunt for like mushrooms or some kind of like sap I think they're hunting for actually. Anyway, go like basically forage in the woods for like supplies. And they go in the woods. She doesn't want to go with this kid. His name's Brandon. And he automatically just starts like picking on her and hitting on her and stuff. And then like boom, Megan's like there, like ready to fight basically. And he starts like roughhousing her, and it's really creepy because he like gets on top of Megan, like mounts her and stuff. It's like, what are you doing, dude? It's not that kind of doll. And she basically is like, you need to learn some manners, and turns on and starts to like she's like, this is where you run away. And he knows like, oh my god, this doll's gonna hurt me. And he starts to run away, and Megan like gets on all fours and like gallops like a horse. It's so freaky. And she doesn't end up hurting him, but like she chases him, and he's just so afraid he like runs out in front of a car, gets hit by a car, and he gets killed. Like it kills him. Like, for one, that teacher, like, oh my god, can you imagine being a teacher, being responsible for people's kids, and then like you got a kid hit by a car and killed? Like, I can't imagine. It stresses me out too much to even think about it. And then it's kind of funny too because later that night Megan and Katie have a conversation about how like because Gemma told her, oh, he's in a better place now. And Katie's like, do you really think heaven's for somebody like him? Kind of like implying like, oh, he was a shit person. Like, don't feel bad for him. And then, so the next person that Megan goes after is the neighbor. So basically the neighbor like calls the cops, and they like come by, and she's like, I don't have the dog, And then later the neighbor's like looking for her dog still, and Megan like plays the dog's bark and like lures her into this like shed. I don't know if it's the neighbor's garage or someone else's garage, but she lures her in this garage, hits her with a power washer with all these like chemicals which is a little ironic because she'd been spraying them, and Gemma was like, I don't want your chemicals running into my driveway. Then Megan like blasts her with this like power washer and chemicals, and like punctures her to death with these nails and murders her, which is crazy. And then I don't and then we see basically like an ad on TV about, not an ad, but like news about Megan, because like the information got leaked because there's like a mole in the company doing like business espionage and like leaking the stuff about Megan. And it's funny because like they're flipping through channels, and I almost wish they would have flipped to like a channel playing like Child's Play, where like Chucky comes to life and like calls the mom a bitch and stuff. Like, I really was hoping they were going to show that, but they didn't. Um, but then, uh, the David like loves Megan. He said like, look at this little girl. She's not surviving. She's thriving. And he's like, and think of all the kids that don't have dead parents, which is like really shitty. But David's just like a typical corporate boss, you know. I'm not sure who the actor is, but he really is just like a typical like, I want to make money, fuck your feelings kind of guy, you know. And Megan like goes to the presentation that, you know, they tried to cancel. She like hacks Gemma's phone and like, you know, talks to people and pretends to be her and stuff. And then, you know, of course we get the scene where Katie like strangles the the dude working on her that I can't think of his name, and like blows up that little area. And then that's when she like, you know, grabs this like paper cutter off of a printer and goes to kill David. And she does like that weird little dance, which I expected her to do the dance more throughout the movie, but she only did it that one time. Like, I don't know, she must really be feeling herself about to kill the guy she just called dad a few hours ago. Excuse me. But, you know, she murders David in the elevator. It's pretty bloody. And then they end up back at the house, and because Megan steals David's car after she kills him. So, you know, she basically comes in, and it's really creepy because she's on the piano and she plays that Eminem song. I don't know what it's called, but it's like, you know, march the march, we all go, you know, step by step, march the march. That one, whatever it's called. She's like playing on the piano, and then is like, oh, Katie, like what happened to us? Like, we'd talk about everything from Jane Austen to Janis Joplin, which I thought was really funny. And she basically tells Gemma, like, I'm going to show her what real love looks like. Like, I'm cutting you out. Like, I know you're trying to take me out, and you're mentally harming Katie, and I'm going to take you out, basically. So they have this big fight, and then eventually the fight leads to the garage, and, like, she's going to murder her, Katie, or Jesus, Megan's going to murder Gemma. And she's like, it's just gonna be you and me now, Katie. Isn't this great? And then it's funny because Megan also said she's not meant to be a mother. Like, look at her, which is like, it's, you know, that is true. She like was not cut out to be a mom. And it's funny because Katie's like, there's another member of this family you haven't met, and his name's Bruce. And she like hooks, you know, makes Bruce work, and basically puts Megan in a chokehold. And then Megan's like, you ungrateful little bitch, which I thought it also reminded me of like Child's Play, you know, where the mom's like, talk, damn it. And then he's like, you stupid. And then she like throws him in the fireplace. So, you know, at least that like connection to Child's Play was there. Because like movies like this would not exist if it wasn't for Child's Play. And it's funny because Katie's like, I'm the primary user now. And then she breaks Megan's CPU with a screwdriver. The cops come, and it's got a really cool like cliffhanger kind of ending because like, oh, we think Megan's dead. And then the machine that Gemma had, it's like an Alexa, but she doesn't call it that because I assume like not sponsored, you know. And it's like that machine like moves on its own, and it's like, oh my god, like Megan's like not like soul, because she doesn't have one, but like it's almost like she must have uploaded her like data and existence onto this machine. So like I hope they do a sequel. That would be really cool. I would love to see a sequel of Megan where like I said, they shoot down a helicopter and stuff like that. But you know, I really was expecting more from this. Like, I thought it was gonna be like a more classic like Saw or Child's Play, you know. And it is a very good doll movie, but it's not a doll movie like I thought it was gonna be. It is all just like AI computer type thing, which, you know, the main theme of this is like, you know, is Megan like better to Katie than Gemma is, you know. And it's kind of sad because she is, but you know, she has no code of ethics, so like in her wake she's just like to solve things. She's just killing things off, and that's not how we solve things, as actual parents. So, but it was good. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Like I said, I watched it for the second time with my 4-year old, and there were times when I did cover her eyes, but I mean, she enjoyed it, she thought it was cool, and I thought it was good. So, I mean, I'd give it like a 3 out of 5, I think. But anyways, thank you for watching my review. I'm going to be posting another one soon about Midsummer, and that one will probably be a little long. I'll definitely upload it after I get my new light tomorrow, and thank you so much for watching.